Good afternoon, everyone. With me is the woman to my right who needs no introduction, the Commissioner of the Department of Health, Judy Persichilli. To her right, another familiar face, COVID-19 Medical Response Advisor and former state epidemiologist, Dr. Eddie Bresnitz. Great to have you both. Eddie, welcome back. To my left, another guy who needs no introduction, the Superintendent of the State Police, Colonel Pat Callahan. We have Chief Counsel Paramel Garg. We will have a APB out for Jared Maples and a cast of thousands here. As we foreshadowed on Monday, I want to spend a couple of minutes up front, and Judy may want to add, or Eddie, some color to this in their remarks, discussing the latest modeling from the Department of Health that is helping to guide our decision-making processes. The caveat, which we've given before, is that I must give, is that while these models are based on a year's worth of data, they do change practically, Judy, I think day to day, as new data better informs our path forward. Additionally, remember, these are projections and they are not certainties. And through our behavior, and we saw this in the spring last year, we can change the trajectory of the models. The more vaccinations we administer, the better we can make the model. And the more we continue to wear our masks and keep social distances, even after we've been vaccinated, we can further push these projected numbers lower. And of course, while the numbers of projected new cases can and should give us all pause, it is the numbers in our hospitals which are of the greatest concern when it comes to determining the steps we need to take as a state. The metrics in our hospitals and their ability to ensure full and equitable treatment for those who need it are the greatest indicators of our on-the-ground realities. If you look around the world right now, there are some places which are facing those awful decisions of equity, Paris among other places. Now, with those guideposts covered, let's take a look at the models. First up, we're going to call this one our moderate case scenario. This model assumes that the number of new hospitalizations follows the rates that we have seen after past religious holidays and expansion of indoor activities, including indoor dining. This model also assumes some impacts from this week's spring break where our students are home. This model takes into account the expected increases in vaccination statewide and also assumes that the vaccines in our arsenal will average 95% in their efficacy against all variants of the virus. I will help you out with the numbers because it's not necessarily the most readable chart, I accept. Under this moderate scenario, we would reach a daily high of new cases on April 18th with 5,445 new positive tests, but hover within the 5,000 plus range for most of April. We would also hit our high total hospitalizations on that same day, April 18th, at 2,669. That is some 300 more than we are seeing currently. Likewise, we would also see our highs of ICU patients at 574 and ventilator use at 319 on that same day, April 18th. Both of these would be significant increases from today. However, even under this scenario, we would not expect to see new cases drop below 3,000 until the middle of June at the earliest, and the number of hospitalizations would not approach 1,000 until August. And for a lot of reasons, I think, Judy, I'll vote on my side here. This feels to me the closest to the reality that we're going to be dealing with. As I said, this is our moderate case scenario. Let's now take a look at a high case. We do not have a low case with us today. I think if there's a demand for that, we should come back and show you that. So this is the high case scenario. This is important because it's got some assumptions which I think are pretty conservative, but we need to test our limits here. To create this model, we still assume that our vaccination program continues at its current pace, but, and this is a big but, that the vaccines only ultimately prove 65% effective against all variants. Not 90-something%, but 65%. And I don't want to overstep my bounds to Judy and Eddie. I don't think there's any evidence that supports 65%, but we're being careful with this scenario. Secondly, for this model, we also assume that more people will lower their guard with the warmer weather, and they won't be adhering to the necessary precautions for protecting themselves at gatherings through the spring and into Memorial Day. And thirdly, we also assume a rate of hospitalizations from the holidays and reopenings that are above what we have seen in the past. With all that being said, under this scenario, we're in for a long, hot summer. So please God, this is not what we have to live through. We would hit a new high in new cases, more than 8,000 daily in mid-May and again in mid-June. You can see kind of in the middle, bracketing the words high scenario where those peaks occur. Likewise, hospitalizations would continue to increase through April before holding into an unsettling range of 3,500 from mid-May all the way into mid-June. Now, certainly this is not a breakpoint number for our healthcare system, thank God. However, so we measure that capacity usually in beds and PPE. But let's remember there are human beings working in these hospitals, treating these patients, doctors, nurses, and support staffs that have been at this for well over a year, and their stress and exhaustion cannot be overlooked or overstated. Additionally, ICU counts wouldn't drop below 600 until late July, and ventilator use would not approach 300 until early August. So we would basically plus or minus be back to where we were in December and January when the second wave was crashing on us. Judy and Eddie, in your remarks, please feel free to address this point. I'm less worried or horrified by the numbers than I am about the length of the calendar. In other words, the numbers don't come close to our physical capacities, although I repeat what I said about doctors, nurses, and support staff. Their capacity, their mental health, their physical health is also a huge factor here. I'm more concerned by how elongated this becomes if it's this scenario that we have to live through, and please God we don't. As I said, these are models. They're not certainties. We can change them through our behavior. The fewer new cases, the fewer new hospitalizations, and the fewer new hospitalizations, the fewer patients in ICU, on vents, and the fewer deaths. It really is that simple. It is a matter of cause and effect. I recall a conversation I had early on, you all may remember this because we talked about it privately and publicly, with Ron Klain, who was at the point not White House Chief of Staff as he is today, but I was calling Ron, who's been a friend for a couple of decades, in his former capacity as the Ebola czar. And I went through our modeling, and Judy, I remember you and I talked about this, and he said, remember, don't forget one thing here. Human behavior can bend these curves. And guess what? He was right, and you all by the millions bent those curves. I don't want to preempt Pat's report, but the compliance violations are not that significant. So most proprietors, by the tens of thousands, are doing the right thing. We have it within us. We've done it once. We can do this again, folks. And if the past, that's not just a challenge, because if the past has shown us anything, it is that you all, by the millions, are up to that task. Again, whatever we're showing in these models, whether it was last spring or over the winter, you have responded, folks, by doubling down on what has been needed to do to slow the spread. And in both instances, whether it was in the spring of last year or the winter of this year, our actual numbers did not meet the projections, and they did not meet them meaningfully. And remember, we were worried that our hospital systems were going to be overwhelmed in April and May last year. And our numbers of beds, I'll never forget it, peaked at 8,270. And that got us at the edge. But because of what you did, I think we had worst case scenarios, 12 to 15,000 at one point bed use. Folks, you're the reason why we did not see those awful moments. We have crushed the curves twice. Let's do it a third time, and hopefully for a final time. I know that we can do this. We have to push through fatigue and refocus. Get vaccinated as soon as you can when you become eligible. Keep wearing your face coverings and social distancing. Let's get this done. Let's make this pandemic history. Now, if we can, let's turn our attention to today's numbers. Looking first at our vaccine dashboard, we are reporting a total of 4,225,964 doses into folks' arms. That's as of 9 a.m. this morning. And there are 1 million, Judy, I'm showing 1,570,907 570,907 individuals who live, work, or study in New Jersey who have now been fully vaccinated. Nationally, I'm going to put these rankings up, but I'm also going to give you a footnote and make sure that I underscore this. We're now third among all U.S. states in terms of the percentage of our vaccine supply that we're getting into the arms of New Jerseyans. That's more than 88%. 2 states ahead of us, Minnesota, 5.6 million people, a great state. We've got 9 million. And North Dakota, 750,000, another great American state, but a population less than either of Bergen County or Essex County. And at nearly 94,000 doses administered daily, we only trail 7 states. We're also 8th in the percentage of our population having received at least 1 dose, and we're the state with the largest population of any of the states in the top 10. So we continue to make unmistakable progress, and these numbers bear that out. But here's the footnote. If you're out there watching right now, and you're eligible, and you still can't get your appointment, we have nothing but complete support, empathy, and sympathy for you. We know that we are still in a supply-demand imbalance as a country and in the state of New Jersey. And so while we're really proud, and Judy and her team deserves the overwhelming amount of credit, Pat, you and your team, we were with, I'll get to that in a minute, some of your colleagues this morning, National Guard, FEMA, all healthcare players, volunteers. There's a lot of folks who deserve credit for those, the current reality, but that does not mean that everybody is in the place they want to be. You have 2 types of people right now, largely, if you're eligible. One is there's still a group, as I said, who are frustrated they can't get that appointment, and we don't blame you for your anxiety. And then there's a much bigger group, I'm happy to say, who have gone through the process. And they say almost to a person, it's the singular most impressive healthcare experience of their life. And we want everybody to be in that category. Let there be no doubt about it. So today, some more news. We are proud to unveil a new tool on our COVID-19 information hub to help you more easily find an available vaccination appointment. To that point, our new appointment finder can be found in its beta version at that website, covid19.nj.gov/finder. This new tool aggregates information across multiple scheduling platforms multiple times an hour, letting you know where appointments are open and directing you on how you can make one for yourself. We hope this new tool will take some of the stress that I mentioned a minute ago out of your search. Now, to be sure, like I said a minute ago, appointments are still limited and are especially so mid to late week. So the finder at this moment will reflect this reality. As our vaccine supply increases over the next few weeks, you will see many more available appointments show up on this website. And with today's launch of the Finder's beta version, we will continue to test and make improvements to the appointment finder, and we will welcome your input in this ongoing effort. The creation of the appointment finder has been a collaboration among the Office of Innovation under the great leadership of Beth Novak, the Office of Information Technology, again under the great leadership of Chris Ryan, and the Department of Health under the leadership of the woman to my right who needs no introduction and her team. And I thank everyone for their great work. I also want to thank some outside partners in this, including CVS, Epic, ZocDoc in the private sector, as well as volunteer groups, including @NJ_vaccine on Twitter, Vaccinate NJ.com, and the U.S. Digital Response. And again, the appointment finder is at that website, covid19.nj.gov/finder. I mentioned this a second ago. Our vaccination program received another boost, no pun intended, early this morning with the formal launch of the new federally run Community Vaccination Center at NJIT in Newark. Judy, Pat, and I were honored to be there with Mayor Ras Baraka, Congresswoman Mikey Sherrill, NJIT President Joel Bloom, as well as a cavalcade of important folks. And importantly, probably most importantly, with some of the first Newarkers who went in to receive their vaccinations. I want to just make a couple of points here. On the left, that woman is in the United States Air Force, based in Texas, but grew up in Millville, New Jersey. The woman to the right is a Newarker, to the best of my knowledge, who was just vaccinated. That gentleman on the right works for the DPW and was known to Mayor Ras Baraka. And I don't know about you two, but that place is a machine. They are going to put 6,200 doses into arms today. Today. Their daily objective is 6,000. They're going to exceed that today. And it was an all hands on deck. And Pat, you know the FEMA Region 2 folks very well through all the storms and pandemics that we've been through, but their folks have been outstanding. They were there today. Armed forces were there. State police were there. HHS under Javier Becerra, the federal Secretary of Health and Human Services, had his regional representative there. It was a really impressive visit, and it's a game changer for the state and specifically for Newark. However, despite all that good news we're getting from the vaccination front, we are also being shocked back into the reality that this pandemic is, as I mentioned, far from over. By the additional, if you add up both presumed or PCR positives and presumed positive antigens, it's a total of 5,902. And you're right, if you're doing the math at home, that already exceeds the peak that we're expecting in a few weeks. The positivity rate, and again, this is from a weekend, is 14.26%. But we've been saying weekdays, 45 to 55,000 tests a weekday. This is based on, guess what, half of that, 26,215. So as much as we're not happy with that number, we're also not surprised by it. Statewide rate of transmission is currently at 1.09. It has been at 1.09 for the past couple of days, and it was at 1.10 for 5 days. And I think, Judy and Eddie, the reason why people ask us all the time, positivity rate goes up and down. The RT doesn't have that same level of volatility, and the answer is simple. The positivity rate is from that day, from that particular date of tests. The rate of transmission, I believe, is on a rolling 7-day basis, and therefore it is somewhat smoothed out. Our hospitals last night, as of 10 p.m., 2,363 patients, 2,221 of whom have been confirmed COVID positive. Just one comment, not only specific to today. You've seen over the past month a dramatic shift in the numbers where we know that somebody's COVID positive versus presumed awaiting their test. Guess what? That's because the antigen testing and then the backup PCR testing capacities in our hospitals are dramatically better than they were not that long ago. And that's why that gap of now today 150-ish, 140-ish of the total are only waiting for tests. Of the total of 458 were being treated in intensive care, 236 ventilators in use, 298 live patients left our hospitals yesterday. That's good, but another 344 confirmed COVID positives went in, and our hospitals reported not yet confirmed 25 in-hospital deaths yesterday. There's no other way to put it. The virus continues to spread, and this pandemic is not over. We have more contagious variants to contend with. We have the on-again, off-again weather we have to contend with, and please God, Pat, bring us some warmer weather sooner than later. And that's preventing us from moving more of our activities outside, and we know when you're outside, this virus is a lot less lethal. And we have pandemic fatigue, to some extent misinformation and denial to contend with as well. This is why we have to continue the basics, wearing face masks, keeping social distances. It's why we ask you to use your common sense. It's why we need to take this thing seriously. I know we all want to get back to things the way they were, believe me. I do, we all do up here, but yet we cannot yet do that. We have to keep pushing folks for a little while longer. We are also, with the heaviest of hearts, reporting another 44 confirmed losses of life, for a total now of 21,993 confirmed deaths, and the number of probable deaths, as we do most Wednesdays, has been revised to 2,568. I think it's fair to say, Judy and Eddie, the overwhelming amount of those probable deaths are from early on, I would think. So when you add those two numbers, we now have the sobering reality of having lost 24,561 members of our New Jersey family. It's hard to believe. Let's take a couple of minutes and honor 3 of those lives. We begin today by honoring this woman, June Boyne. June was 87 years old and a longtime resident of Haddon Heights in Camden County, where she raised her 6 kids. Her home was a warm and inviting place, and June had a reputation for never turning anyone away, especially if she should provide them with a home-cooked meal. and she was well renowned for her chocolate chip cake and her chocolate pudding pie. In her professional life, June was a property manager at the Lakeside Apartments in nearby Woodbury, and her daughters told me everybody there loved her. But once she retired, her entire focus went on to the things that really mattered to her in no particular order. Bowling, her regular pinochle games with her friends, spending time with her sisters Billy, who survives her, and the late Eileen, and doting on her grandchildren and great-granddaughter. June's family and friends will always remember her good nature. She never complained at any circumstance, her eternal optimism, and her infectious laughter. She leaves behind 5 of her 6 children: Edward, Holly, Albert and Frank, who are twins, by the way, and Audra, and their spouses. Another son, Michael, sadly predeceased her about a year ago, not from COVID. She's also survived by her 8 grandchildren: Edward Jr., Stephen, Garrett, Jacob, Allison, Lauren, Ava, and Christopher, and her great-granddaughter, Ellie. Her first great-grandson is expected in May. I had the honor of speaking with her 2 daughters, Holly and Audra, on Monday, and they gave me quite a picture of this remarkable woman. June's love of family and life reflected the very best values of our New Jersey family. May God bless and watch over her, and may her family carry on her extraordinary legacy. Next up, we honor the life of West New York's Hector Mendoza Sr. He was born in a small town in the hills of El Salvador and came to New Jersey a half-century ago in search of his American dream. He arrived with very little to his name, but held a drive to be successful and to be accepted in this new country. He began his journey in the embroidery factories of Union City, but when an opportunity to drive a truck at the Port of Elizabeth opened, he took a leap of faith and focused on learning English so he could earn his CDL license. He succeeded at both and was a driver for Marine Container for nearly 20 years. Hector was proud of what he accomplished given where he'd come from, but he would say his greatest accomplishments were as a devoted husband and father, and his greatest joy was seeing his twin children, Hector Jr., with whom I had the great honor of speaking on Monday, and Jennifer, graduate together from Rutgers University. He is survived by that woman on the left, his wife of 45 years, Maria, and by his children, Hector Jr. and Jennifer. He was only 68 years old. Everyone who comes to our state and our nation has a different American dream. We are so proud that Hector found his in New Jersey, and may God bless and watch over him and his family. And finally today we remember this guy, Robert Brennan Jr. of Hamilton, right here in Mercer County. Bob was 64 years old. Born and raised on the other side of the Delaware River in the Philadelphia suburbs, Bob came to New Jersey following his graduation from the University of Pennsylvania, bringing with him a love of math and a degree in engineering to take a job with Johnson & Johnson. And he worked with J&J for a total of 30 years and still found time along the way to earn an MBA from Rider University. Bob's family and friends always noted that his analytical mind made him a ringer for any trivia game anyone dared to challenge him to. More than anything, he focused on his family and friends, and he always considered those who had joined him for life's journey as a part of his family, whether they be neighbors, former classmates, or work colleagues. He was also devoted to his Catholic faith and was a member of the Knights of Columbus because he knew he had an even larger family to do good things for. Bob leaves behind his wife, Lauren, with whom I had the great honor of speaking on Monday after 42 years of marriage, along with his daughter, Cassie. Cassie lives in Columbus, Ohio, with her husband, Nicholas. He's also survived by his sisters, Kathy and Aileen. We trust that Bob is receiving his eternal reward for a life well lived and lived in accordance with his faith. We are honored that he chose to make New Jersey his home, and may God bless and watch over him and his family. Switching gears, if I may, this week our Jewish community is celebrating Passover. Our Indian American community, and we have one of the largest both Jewish and Indian American communities of any state in America, celebrated Holi. On Sunday, our Christian communities will be celebrating Easter. Each holiday is a celebration of renewal and rebirth, and the promise of a better day. Let's all do our part to keep to the spirit of these holidays and to maintain our commitment to our fellow New Jerseyans to work together to end this pandemic. And let's remember that one way we can show this commitment is by helping our small businesses across the state not just survive, but thrive, so our communities can remain strong. And to that end, tomorrow, I'm going to be incredibly honored to be in Burlington County to sign into law a bill that will commit an additional $25 million in grants for small businesses with 5 or fewer employees who have been among the hardest hit. This bill will further the tremendous work of the New Jersey Economic Development Authority, which has already committed hundreds of millions of dollars in federal coronavirus relief funds to our small businesses. The EDA has worked hard across the board to build partnerships, not just with local business owners, but also with countless community organizations. One of those partnerships is with the New Jersey Farmers Cooperative, under the leadership of that woman, Director Barbara Wild. From their home base in North Cape May, the New Jersey Farmers Cooperative helps put educational programs and cooperative marketing opportunities to work so farmers, artists, and artisans can all succeed together. The Farmers Cooperative recently received a grant through the EDA's new Sustain and Serve New Jersey program that will allow it to purchase 150,000 meals from local restaurants across South Jersey to feed families who need a helping hand. More broadly, though, the cooperative is ready to help us prepare for a stronger future by working to lower the bar for entry into farming and small business ownership, especially for people of color, for women, youth, veterans. They're doing this through their work to establish a business incubator at Legates Farm in Cape May, in collaboration with the SCORE, uppercase, Business Membership Program and Stockton University. Other projects in the works include a teaching garden, a community garden allotment program, and an apprenticeship program for farming and historic restoration. There's a lot happening, needless to say. So to Barbara, who I had the great honor of speaking with on Monday, and her team and everyone working with the New Jersey Farmers Cooperative, I say thank you for your partnership and for all you're doing to keep New Jersey's farming heritage alive and sustainable for the future. Check them out. NJFarmersCoop.com, not org, com. NJFarmersCoop, COOP.com. With that, I'll prepare to hand things over to Judy for more detail into the modeling in today's number. Before I do, let's flash this one up, Pat, on your behalf. For the state troopers out there everywhere, first of all, we had an extraordinary ceremony on Monday after our press conference to celebrate the 100th birthday of the New Jersey State Troopers, the premier state law enforcement organization in America. I just want to remind everybody, as I'm sure Pat will remind us, to folks out there who want to become a part of that tradition, to be a part of the next 100 years, sign up. Applications are open from March 28th, which I think was Sunday, all the way to April 23rd. You could see the website right there, NJ.com. Sign up. It's an extraordinary career. I've had the honor of being now at several graduations, and it's emotional. The quality of the women and men is as high as it gets. It's a great career, and you're helping us, by the way, folks. If that weren't enough, you're helping us keep New Jersey safe and secure, whether we're in a pandemic or whether we're in the daily, day in and day out reality of living in this great state. And lastly, as we turn things over, especially as we enter the Easter weekend, take your precautions, everybody, seriously. It is expected to be a little chillier than we'd like, and potentially, at least for part of it, a little bit of rain in the next couple of days. Folks are going to want to get back inside, and we understand, but we have to be careful and vigilant. We only want chocolate bunnies, jelly beans, and Peeps to be doing what anyone takes home from their Easter egg hunt. No taking home COVID-19. With that, please help me welcome the woman who needs no introduction, the Commissioner of the Department of Health, Judy Persichilli.
Thank you, Governor. As the Governor shared, hospitalizations have increased again in our state, and this trend is definitely concerning. Over the past 2 weeks, new hospitalizations are up 28%. Patients in hospitals are up 21%, and patients in ICU are up 16%. However, ventilator use is actually down 4%. In terms of hospitalizations, we are seeing changes in those most affected. When we compare hospitalizations in the first and last weeks of March by age group, we're seeing the percentage of younger individuals being hospitalized. We have seen a 31% increase among hospitalizations in individuals between the ages of 20 and 29. It's a 31% increase. 9% increase in the age group of 30 to 39. A 48% increase among individuals 40 to 49. 29% in the age group of 50 to 59. 27% 60 to 69. And interestingly, 7% those 70 to 79 years of age, and only 1% increase for those over 80. The largest increase is among the ages of 40 and 49. This could explain why ventilator use is declining, minus 4% over the past 2 weeks, because seeing younger individuals in the hospital who may not need ventilator assist. But rising case counts are driving an increase in our overall COVID-19 activity report, our CALI reports. If you go on our website, you will see that the state, in February, half of the counties were in yellow. All of our counties are now back in orange or high-risk activity. Based on this report, we're expecting continued increases in hospitalizations and, unfortunately, deaths as we follow this rise. These sustained increases of hospitalizations and COVID activity demonstrate that we are definitely in another wave of this virus. In the predictive modeling that the governor reviewed, our assumptions, and they are assumptions, show increasing hospitalizations April through May with a very slow recovery over the summer. It is important to note that models change daily, and if you change even one factor in the modeling, the scenarios can vary, but they are very helpful for planning purposes. As the governor stated, we use certain assumptions to develop these models, but it is our behaviors that can impact the trajectory that we are on. I have shared this predictive modeling with the hospital CEOs across the state because I want them to be ready for the possibility of perhaps a long and difficult spring and summer. We cannot forget the dark days of April last year, where we saw a peak of 8,270 individuals in the hospital. We had shortages of PPE and ventilators. We had to bring up field medical stations. Tents were set up in hospital parking lots. Unused wings and cafeterias were converted, all to make bed space for critical COVID patients. Well, now we have adequate PPE. We have operational stockpiles, and we have a strategic stockpile at the state level. We have ventilators, and we have supplies. And we don't expect hospitalizations to rise to these levels. But we must work together and be vigilant so we ensure that we don't slip backwards. We all worked so hard last year to flatten the curve. We have to redouble our efforts. There is still an uncertainty ahead with this relentless virus that continues to change. All of the country is in a race to vaccinate as variants are contributing to the surges. New Jersey is making great progress in vaccinations, and we're confident that if the supply continues to increase, we can continue the rapid pace of administering doses in the arms of New Jerseyans. We just returned from the FEMA Community Vaccination Center in Newark, which has the capacity to vaccinate 6,000 or more individuals per day, 7 days a week. This site will help us continue our efforts to ensure vaccine equity by reaching communities who have been disproportionately impacted by COVID-19. The center is in addition to 12 vaccination sites that we have up and active across the city, receiving part of the state's supply of vaccine. Additionally, there are 6 pharmacies in the city that are part of the Federal Retail Pharmacy Partnership, receiving additional doses of vaccine from the feds. To date, nearly 40,000 Newark residents have received at least 1 dose of vaccine, and 19,075 individuals have completed their vaccine journey. This week, New Jersey's allocation of doses of vaccine totaled 494,430. We received 174,800 Moderna vaccines, 87,400 first doses, and 87,400 second doses. Our Moderna allocation has actually been flat for over a month. This week we received 267,930 Pfizer doses, 148,590 first doses, and 119,340 second doses. And surprisingly, we received 51,700 J&J Janssen vaccine. Next week, we will get another boost. We are expecting 551,320 vaccines. A little bit higher, Moderna, about 3,900 Moderna. Additionally, that is a total of 178,700 Moderna. And 241,000, 20,000 Pfizer, a little bit lower. However, we are expecting 131,600 J&J doses next week. So we're excited about the increase in the one-shot J&J dose. Moving on to my daily report, as the governor shared, our hospitals have reported 2,363 hospitalizations with 458 individuals in intensive care. It is believed that the uptick in cases is due primarily to more contagious variants, for example, B.1.1.7, the UK variant, coupled with less cautious behaviors. However, we are still better than where we were in January. In mid-January, we had 3,547 patients in our hospitals and 635 patients in ICU. There are no new reports of multisystem inflammatory syndrome in children. The positivity in the state on March 27th was 14.26%. The northern part of the state reported 15%, central part of the state 14.38%, the southern part of the state 11.7%. We have no new cases in our veterans hospitals. We have one new positive case among patients in our psych hospitals. So that concludes my daily report. Please remember to celebrate your holiday safely. Continue to mask up, socially distance, wash your hands frequently, stay home if you're sick, and get tested. Thank you.
Judy, many thanks for all of the above. And I suspect that we all have the same reaction. That setup in Newark is a machine. That thing had, I forget how many stations they said they had, but they had dozens of stations. You know, you see something like that and you really can see. And by the way, disproportionate amount of representation of folks getting vaccinated of color, which is exactly what the doctor ordered, and that's why it's where it is. Pat, again, it was a real treat. Thank you, Judy. It was a real treat to be with you Monday afternoon, including with your wife, Linda, and your mom and dad, and your dad's a retired trooper, so that made it even more special. I did notice that your mounted colleagues had a little bit of a challenge when the two helicopters flew overhead. Again, congratulations. Happy 100th anniversary. Here's to a second great century. I know you don't have much on it, but any color on compliance, weather, any other matters? Please.
Thank you, Governor. Good afternoon, and thank you from all the women and men in the state police for Monday. And I, too, was glad to be sitting next to you and not on the top of that horse when those choppers went over. Yes. But she held on. So with regard to compliance, as the governor indicated, there was no reported EO violations to the Rock since we last met. I, too, would like to just thank, of all the partners there, they were all phenomenal, but that site this morning, it was the first time that we got to meet Tom Fargione, who's the new FEMA Region 2 administrator. A ton of work's been done by him and his team, and Patrick Cornbill from FEMA as well. But to meet Tom in person, and I know how involved he was in making sure that that idea on paper a few weeks ago became an operational, up and running 6,000 plus vaccines a day. Just a phenomenal team effort, so thank you for that, Governor. And I also appreciate you letting everybody know about our application process. This is, we are in our 100th year of service. There's that slide, that NJ.com. That window that opened up Monday closes April 23rd. And from this process, we will probably have a few state police classes from this process. So if people say, I'll wait till next year, this process might yield us a pool of candidates for the next several years. That website has the minimum qualifications, the physical training requirements, all the things that the women and men interested in being a Jersey Trooper would need. And I do appreciate everybody here. If you could help us amplify that message too, and see the phenomenal young women and men that want to join us in our next century of service. So thank you for that too, Gov. That's all I have.
Thank you, Pat. FEMA is a great example, to your point, of an organization that did not miss a beat and answered every bell, going from one federal administration to another. From the Trump early days of the field medical stations, PPE, testing, the two mega testing sites. I remember being on MSNBC and they show a picture of the Bergen Community County College. There's a 1.5 mile line of cars. That feels like a decade ago, but that FEMA has been with us every single step of the way. Tom is new. He's come in. Is he acting or is he acting for now? But just really, and Patrick, if I see Patrick again, I think I'm going to suggest our families go away on vacation together and we could do that again. These folks are unbelievable. And each of the injections we saw put into arms today was by a member of the United States Air Force, and I believe all based in Texas. So it's not, we got resources coming from all over the place in to help, and that's just what the doctor ordered. We'll start out with Matt over here. Before we do, tomorrow, I think we will be virtual again tomorrow. We won't be with you on Friday as it is Good Friday, and we'll be back again on Monday. And I think Monday will be later than normal. I think we're going to shoot for 2:30 on Monday. And so obviously want to reiterate what Judy said, what I've said, what we've all said. This is a season probably only comparable to December. Right now we're in a month period where a lot of religious holidays are being celebrated. Passover, Holi, Easter, soon Ramadan in a few weeks. Bless you all. Enjoy those holidays, but please behave responsibly and celebrate those holidays responsibly. With that, Mac, welcome.
Good afternoon. Governor, is being among the states that are leading the nation in new cases cause to lobby the federal government for more vaccines beyond what's anticipated to come in the coming weeks, even though that number is rising steadily? And if worse or even moderate case models comes true, will you restore some restrictions, and at what point? What's the trigger? Finally, Colonel, the AG's office released a report yesterday that cleared you and several troopers of any misconduct from a 2017 sexual assault case. But the review also faulted the state police for a breakdown in communication with county prosecutors. Curious if you want to respond to this or respond to their conclusion.
So Matt, I'll start and then I'll hand things over to Pat, who I'm sure will want to address the last one. I would like to address that as well. On vaccine supply, I think it's fair to say we lobby them every day. And the fact that the numbers Judy just went through are going up next week. I don't think those numbers included, I know they didn't include the FEMA location today, which is separate. That's 42,000 on top of that. And I think the federal pharmacy partnership is also in addition to that. So we're pounding away. That's part of the reason I was on with Jeff Zients on Friday afternoon, myself, in addition to Judy and our whole team. Restoring restrictions. Listen, please, God, we don't have to do that. Notwithstanding, and Matt, I'm not picking on, I know you didn't write it, with all due respect to something that appeared in the Ledger today that said we're not making our decisions based on data and facts. With all due respect, we see that differently. We have been, I think, in two respects, the most cautious and methodical state on reopening. I'll come back to that in a second, of any state in America. And secondly, the steps we've taken, particularly look at a couple of late, are deliberate in their direction. And then thirdly, I think we're the only state in America that has not lurched forward and had to step back. We came close to that on indoor dining in June, but Judy and the rest of us looked at the numbers and said, you know, we're not ready for it. So we never started on that journey until September 4th. And by the way, as passionately as I am about making these comments about methodical openings, we also know that that has come with enormous pain in businesses that have gone under, restaurants, et cetera. So I said directionally as well. So for instance, large venues, I did ask the governor last night at Prudential Center to allow them to go to 20%. And you're in there, I'm in there last night, it's empty, and you envision 3,000 or 3,600 people in there, and can you see them in a new building with outstanding ventilation? Can they social distance? That's the sort of place that we feel good about. You saw us raise our outdoor limits, Judy, and we raised them to 200. That's deliberate. If Pat can cooperate in the weather, we could get more people outside doing things that they're right now doing inside. So I'm hoping we do not have to do any of that further tightening, and to the contrary, I hope we can continue to make methodical, incremental steps to reopen. But I do want to say one last point. We have not said this in a couple of weeks. I'm going to pick Judy. If you look at Judy's habits over the course of a week or two, and you look at my habits, and my habits are much more indoor in nature than Judy's, the chances are higher that I've been exposed and or that I'll get the virus than it would be for Judy. So notwithstanding everything I just said, if you're indoors, and you're indoors a lot, and you have to take these off, probably because you're eating or drinking, you're running a higher risk. There's no question about that. On the last question, I would just say this. I'm not surprised for 1 second, but I was quite gratified to see, Pat, that, as I said, not surprised for a second, but that you were deemed to have done no wrongdoing, and I know you have an extraordinary man of character and a great leader, but with that, please jump in with anything you've got.
Thank you, Governor, and thanks for the question, Matt. I had the opportunity to read that in its entirety this morning. I did not have access to it until the public did. Did not have an advance copy. Its independence, its thoroughness, it certainly speaks for itself because of those two things, especially the thoroughness of that investigation and subsequent findings. And to that end, I do not plan on offering any additional comments with regard to it. Thank you.
Bless you. Thank you for that. I'm told you're Josh. Is that right? And you're with Matt? My oldest son's name is Josh, so you're automatically in the Hall of Fame. Do you have a question? Please.
Good afternoon, Governor. As more residents are vaccinated, do you foresee a time where vaccine passports will be required in places like public buildings? And in addition to the moderate and worst case models, is the state looking at a model for a best case scenario?
Both good questions, and again, if you continue at this, you've chosen a great career. I think we're open-minded on the passports. I get asked this a lot, and folks have tagged me as a supporter of this idea. I personally think, Judy, this has got to come from the feds and the CDC. Has to really be the generator of not just the idea, but probably of the at least give us guidance on execution. It is a concern that the record keeping right now for millions of Americans is a piece of paper that they get when they leave their first dose, and they've got their second dose date and time on there. That's a little bit, we're going through this, completely unrelated, we're going through this on expungement. Everyone wants automatic expungement after the law is signed. The problem is most of the records are pieces of paper in courtrooms up and down the state. So that is a concern. There are questions of equity. So this is something you get asked a lot on voting rights. What's wrong with IDs? Well, you have historically, and I think in the here and now, an underrepresentation of valid government IDs in underserved communities, particularly communities of color. But it's something I would say that I remain open-minded to. In the best case scenario, I think if you could hold off on that, unless you've got it at your fingertips, we can show that on Monday. Would you be okay with that, Mahan? Judy, is that okay with you? We could show it on Monday. But my gut tells me we're in for the moderate reality. There's a very good, I think you agree with me, There's a really good piece in the New York Times digital portal today by David Leonhardt, sort of a best of, or tale of two cities, rather. Near term, the next 4 to 6 weeks, we're in this variant versus vaccine reality, but there's a very good cause to be optimistic in the medium term. And the medium term is, say June. But we could show the best case scenario on Monday if you're okay with that. Nice to meet you. Sir, do you have anything? Please.
I have two. First, for the Health Commissioner, apparently 1,895 PCR cases were removed from the total from yesterday. That's a huge number. Why did this happen? And also, for the Governor, the DEP is preparing land use regulatory changes, including flood zones. The NJ.BIA says the DEP is relying on a Rutgers report from a 2019 that estimates 5 feet of sea level rise by the year 2100 and would put half the state in a flood zone. Are you aware of this, and do you support this move by the DEP? Thank you.
Thank you. I don't have any comment in particular about the DEP question other than I'm very much aware of the report. We made a big deal out of it when it came out from Rutgers, that is. But I've got no color on the DEP piece. Mahan, can you follow up on that one for me? Thank you for that. And Judy, any color on the, so you said 1,839 PCR tests were removed yesterday, is that correct? PCR results? Okay. Can we come back to you on that? No color. I know there was some inference, and I'm not suggesting it was Alex, there was some inference based on his question the other day that for some reason we're making this look worse than it is. This just in, that's the last thing that we have any interest in doing. If you all think it's a burden, you should assume you've got a lot of sympathy up here in the sense the last thing we want to do is mislead people. That's just not going to happen. That's not to say that there may be some reason why you got a handful of tests that are getting caught up on, or to your question, getting removed. We'll come back to you with color. The last thing we're going to do is make this seem worse than it is. We are trying to call balls, or better than it is, by the way. We're not going to do that either. We want to call balls and strikes and call it as we see it. Dave, with that, sir, Kenny, I can't apologize. I didn't.
No worries.
Skip you. Dave, I apologize. I'll get back to you.
Afternoon,
How are
Governor.
you, sir?
I'm well. Saw you on television this morning.
Oh, you did it. Yeah, I was on Fox 29, right?
Yes, and to that end, you say you...
With Alex and Mike?
With Alex and Mike. You said that you wouldn't qualify for a vaccine appointment until Monday, and you just announced a new component to the web portal, albeit in beta mode. In advance of that, is it ready to handle the high amount of traffic, either the new vaccine finder or the regular COVID-19 vaccine appointment website? Is it ready for the traffic? Because you're talking about a large window of people. And then my last question, Congressman Gottheimer and Pascrell said that unless President Biden takes the deduction cap on the salt, take it off the table, they are not entertaining any type of corporate tax or any tax code changes, even though President Biden wants to have trying to find a way to pay $2 trillion for this infrastructure plan. You're vocal about the deduction cap. Are you aligning yourself with the congressman as far as getting rid of it before we start talking about raising corporate taxes? And do you feel conflicted about that? Because I'm sure New Jersey has a number of infrastructure projects that need money to pay for it, but at the same time, you have two congressmen that said we're not going to talk about it until we get rid of this deduction cap.
Yeah. So I want to make sure I understood. Dante, stay close. And I love your mask, by the way, as I've said before. If folks can't see it, it's the flag of this great state of New Jersey. First, as I said this morning, I'm eligible, as is my wife, beginning on Monday. So we're in the 55 and up category. We'll go online just like everyone else is doing, and we'll try to get our appointment. I think your question was, is the appointment finder going to be up for the fact that you've got a lot more volume coming on as of Monday? Yeah. So far, we have been able to do that, and we wouldn't be taking this step if we didn't think it could. But again, remember, this is in the context, without question, of an ongoing supply-demand imbalance. So I'm very confident in our technology team, Judy's team, and their inputs. But again, when you add a new group of people, you add at least temporarily to the supply-demand imbalance, but I'm confident that the system will hold up well. We had real vendor issues early on, as we've spoken to many times. We had teething pains with the call center. We're largely through that on both fronts, right? It wasn't a straight line, but we're in a place that we feel good about. I spoke to Congressman Pascrell yesterday. He and I were at a Coverall Kids event, which was a home run in Passaic, city of Passaic. And he mentioned he was going to take that position. I don't have any conflict about it. I don't blame him for taking it. We were crushed by the SALT cap. I think it was completely political by the last federal administration. I'm very happy that Secretary of the Treasury Janet Yellen has expressed broad sympathy and support for addressing that. And so we'll see whether or not it ends up being a part of this infrastructure plan. I can't predict, but I sure as heck don't blame Congressman Pascrell or Congressman Gottheimer for having that opinion. May I say, because you asked about it, this infrastructure plan, which I think the President is unveiling later this afternoon, is a huge game changer for us. I mentioned this morning in Newark. If you are investing heavily in things like infrastructure, climate, roads, bridges, rails, tunnels, because of our density, because of our location, because of our legacy assets, we are a disproportionate winner. So we're going to win much more significantly relative to an average American state. And I will say with some amount of pride, we're doing a lot of the stuff that's embedded in that $3 trillion plan. That access to community college, access to pre-K, climate initiatives, all-time high investment in infrastructure. So for a lot of reasons, we like what the President is doing. Thank you for that. Dave, I misspoke a minute ago, but here we are.
I'll let you off the hook this time. Thank you. Commissioner and Dr. Eddy, could you guys explain, please, why you think more young people are getting hospitalized? Is this just the result of the UK variant being a little more severe in terms of the illness that it's causing, or is there something else going on here? Are you concerned that people, Governor, may be fed up and tired of dealing with the pandemic and they just won't behave appropriately? In your comments about the modeling, it sounded like you're trying to let people know that this could really be a problem and this thing could drag on terribly into the summer if people are not behaving properly. Commissioner, the Pfizer vaccine is reportedly very effective for kids ages 12 to 15, and they say if they get approval, they're anticipating having enough supplies to let our children get vaccinated before the start of school in September. What's your reaction to this? Many vaccines are mandatory for children to attend preschool and school in New Jersey. Do you guys think that the COVID vaccine could or might be added to this list? And finally, as you were talking about, Commissioner, the vaccine delivery is increasing for the coming week. If this pattern continues and we do hit herd immunity, or as Dr. Eddy says, community coverage, protection by Memorial Day, Governor, what do you think the reality will be in our state at the end of May? Will we be masking and social distancing still? Do you think that there'll be parades, dancing in the streets? Will you declare a state holiday with free beer for everybody over 21?
Exactly.
Will changes continue to be made incrementally, though, based on hospitalizations, the RT, and other metrics?
Yep.
Obviously, you can't predict where we're going to be at the end of May, but can you give us a sense, what's our new reality going to look like this summer if things go according to plan?
I will let, we got to give Eddie his money's worth, so I got to let Eddie comment in a second on the question as to why younger people are getting it. Are we concerned that people are fed up? I have to say this, fed up or don't behave. I think fatigue is something that I would prefer to say, because I think a lot of really good-natured people are sick and tired of this. And by the way, we'd be among them. And I don't think it's because they're being jerks. You listen to Pat's compliance reports. Does this mean they're not missing bad behavior by establishments? I'm sure there are. But when places like the ABC go out, they do a couple of counties a night, they're out in a big way in those counties. So I think folks are generally doing the right thing, but people have, I do think that they're showing rightful fatigue, and we're just saying, listen, these models, these are the choices before us, and no amount of public policy that we proffer is going to move the needle from one of those models to the other. It's going to be the millions of us together. I'll defer to my colleagues to the right on the Pfizer vax for the kids, but your question is, could you see this as the second part was, could you see vaccines for kids being another factor on school reopenings? Yeah, yeah. I personally am still of the opinion that I think we should want people to get to this vaccine of their own free will. I really continue to believe that. And that's not to say that I think Rutgers is wrong to do what they've done. My personal bias is you get there on your own free will. The most important question you've asked me is what's it look like Memorial Day? I'd say it's really the window Memorial Day to the 4th of July when we normally open the state up on the shore in our lakes and have that. I think we're in store. I still believe for a great summer, but, and this is the but, I think particularly when we're indoors, we're going to have to continue to, as my late mother would say, I'm not even sure what this means, mind our P's and Q's. So I just continue to think if you're in close proximity indoors, we're going to still have to be careful, and I continue to believe that. Will we continue to be incremental? Yes. I don't see that we won't be incremental in how we reopen. That doesn't mean, though, that by the time in that Memorial Day to 4th of July window that we're not at a much more meaningfully open level. Parimal and I had a conversation earlier. We want to make sure, and we will give sooner than later, guidance on what graduations can look like, which we hope will overwhelmingly occur outdoors and hopefully on time. But I think we're in a dramatically different and better place, both compared to where we were in January, to some extent where we are now, but especially compared to last summer. May I go to Eddie? Any observation really in particular on why younger people, and any reaction to either of you to Pfizer trialing a COVID vaccine for kids?
Well, with the increased and successful vaccination of those who are older, in the 65 and older category, we have I think 2/3 of that population vaccinated already, and we've seen the benefits of that in the long-term care facilities where the incidence of disease has really declined, I'm going to say almost to zero compared to what we had before. So we know that the efficacy of the vaccine in the older population who were eligible from the beginning or pretty close to the beginning has made a difference. And the younger population, whether they have underlying diseases or not, have not been in the highest priority area. So the proportions that we're seeing that the commissioner basically stated is not surprising, that we're seeing more of those individuals forming the bulk of the folks who are being hospitalized. That's not to say that we don't have older people who aren't being hospitalized too. There are plenty who haven't been vaccinated yet. I will say that I want to remind folks, though, while I have the opportunity, governors, to say that, we do have a therapy, monoclonal antibodies, that can prevent hospitalizations, particularly those who are eligible. If you're 12 or over, if you're in a high-risk setting, it's only for outpatients, and if you have mild or severe disease. We actually have a flyer that we're distributing that will remind people if they're positive and they're mildly ill to contact their healthcare facility to see whether they're eligible for the vaccine, for the monoclonal therapy. As far as the Pfizer, it's a great announcement that we heard today. Just a reminder for those who didn't see that, it's for the 12 and 15 population. And the top-line data that they reported in their press release is very encouraging for this population. But, as I've said, and the commissioner's heard me say this many times, we really shouldn't make policy on a press release from a manufacturer. That's not a good approach. We saw recently with the AstraZeneca vaccine that the data changed over a few days. So, we really do need to see the data. But with that being said, Pfizer's indicated that they're likely to file a supplemental application to extend their emergency use authorization that they currently have for the vaccine. If, let's say they file for that in the next 3 or 4 weeks, which is what they implied, it'll take the FDA 3 or 4 weeks to basically review it with input from their advisory committee. They'll issue the EUA. The Advisory Committee on Immunization Practices for the CDC will review it. Eventually, there'll be a recommendation. It could very well be by June that we'll actually have guidance from the CDC and probably support from the president to basically move forward. That's the point where you basically, make policy. But in the meantime, I think we'll be preparing for the possibility that we'll be vaccinating those adolescents. And of course, Pfizer said they're extending their trials down to younger ages as well in a sequential approach. And so we're looking forward to that data as well.
Eddie, thank you. This is not to say transmission is in the same category as fatalities, but thank God to remind us all as of this moment, of the 20-odd thousand fatalities, 7 persons have been under the age of 18. Again, that's not to say that kids, and we've talked about this ad nauseum, not of late, that's not to say they can't transmit the vaccine. Judy, it won't surprise you that Pat Callahan has bailed me out on mind your P's and Q's, and he reminds me also that he's premature on this because Lent is not over until Sunday. But English pubs and taverns of the 17th century, bartenders would keep a watch on the alcohol consumption of the patrons, keeping an eye on the pints and quarts that were consumed. As a reminder, the patrons, the bartender would recommend that they mind their P's and Q's. Pat, thank you for that. Something I did not know. Nikita, we'll close this out today. I've gotten into a right-left habit here. I should mix this up, shouldn't I? I apologize. It would allow you guys to leave early if you wanted to, so I'll focus on that going forward. Nikita.
All right, so Governor, most of my questions today are about the American Dream Mall, which yesterday was reported is going to lose a lot of equity in the developer that funded or built the mall is going to lose equity in a couple of other malls because it's defaulting on loan payments. I'm wondering if American Dream has asked the state for help with this. I'm wondering if the state intends to offer help. And I'm wondering, given the general downward trajectory of malls as a concept, what you think the long-term prognosis is for American Dream. Separately, a Stockton poll released earlier today put your approval rating at 58% to 36%. Do you think that's an accurate reflection of where you are? And then lastly, I have a question from David Wildstein, who asks if you have any comment on allegations that Tom Moran put his hands on Hudson County Prosecutor Esther Suarez.
Okay, well, those are certainly all over the place and certainly off topic, that's for sure. On the American Dream Mall, I've read the same stories you have, and as I understand it from the press, that their lenders are going to get an equity stake in their non-New Jersey assets, Minnesota and their location in Canada. That's my understanding of it. Secondly, we talk to these folks and work with them all the time. I'm not aware of any further, because the state, as you know, at the beginning of this, long before I got here, was very involved. But I'm not aware of any other financial discussions as it relates to us. Having said that, I still am a believer in this thing. I'm not sure if I had a blank sheet of paper, how many years ago, 15 years ago, that either it would have been this exact concept or that it would have taken so long and had all the challenges. It's an extraordinary concept that I think in a normal time is still a winner. It's just, I haven't been in it for over a year, but I was in it the day that they kicked off their amusement part of it. You've been in it. It's an extraordinary concept, notwithstanding the fact that e-commerce, which was already had a lot of momentum before the pandemic, has picked up even further. I still think there's a place for something that is as experiential as this thing is, to go to. They still believe that it is a big tourist attraction. And my guess is that in a normal time, they're probably right. I really could see somebody going there as a destination. And so I'm not running it, but I still believe in it. No reaction to the polling numbers. I hope they included my family, which may explain them. But the numbers we're focused on are the ones we're talking about here. But I appreciate there's a time for politics and there's a time for not. And obviously, nice to hear the number, but not spending any time thinking about it. Listen, I haven't seen this whole thing as it relates to Tom. I know what it is generally, and a couple of general reactions I'd have. I would say putting your hands on anyone in that manner, based on how it was described to me, is never okay. And I can't believe I've got to say that, but I think that's true. I think secondly, as we have said many times in other situations, we always have to start in the place of believing the women who come forward. And that, I think, holds here as well. I always have said in other situations, in a situation like this, if there's an accusation, there should be an independent investigation, and I don't see why it would be any different on this one. And if the organization itself knew about this and did nothing to look into it, I think they have to answer for that as well. So those are generic points, but they feel to me like they're consistent with a situation like this. Again, we are going to be virtual tomorrow. I will be signing a bill in Burlington County, which is a game changer for micro businesses. And I mentioned this earlier. This is basically in the 5 and fewer category, which have been particularly crushed. And I'm not sure, given the timing, if I'll have COVID numbers, but I'll try to have them at that point. I'll mask up and say this as I do that. Judy, always an honor. Eddie, great to have you. I know you're going to miss a few weeks. Are we going to have you next week or no? Next 2 weeks we'll miss you. Okay. You'll be here the next 2 weeks, and then we'll miss you. Okay. We'll try to keep the home fires burning while you're gone. Pat, as always, thank you. Paramel, Mahan, cast of thousands. Again, folks, stay at it. We get that sort of moderate case versus the high case. I think we can together achieve the moderate, if not better case. And we'll promise to show the best case on Sunday. Maybe show them the data. The curves are less important to me, Mahan, than just showing cases, hospitalizations, ICU, ventilators, and peak, just side by side. Best, medium, worst. It's up to us, folks. We've done it before now twice. We could do it a third time. And thanks to the vaccinations, God willing, the third time is a charm, and it's the last time. If you're celebrating Passover, bless you. Do it responsibly. Holi is behind us. Easter is upon us. Ramadan in a few weeks. Please, you have our blessings to each and every one of you, but please, please, please celebrate responsibly. Take care, folks. God bless.